I was on the third week of a solo cycling trip across the country. It was something I'd always wanted to do, no fixed route, just me, my bike, and a map with a few places I thought might be worth seeing. That night, I was somewhere in the middle of Nevada, far from any real town. The sun had already set when I spotted this old, abandoned gas station off the side of a desolate highway. The roof was caved in on one side, weeds had swallowed most of the lot, and the windows were either broken or covered in grime thick enough to make them look black. It looked like it had been out of use for decades. I was exhausted, and the flat concrete next to the building seemed like the safest, flattest place around to set up my small tent. I didn't think twice. After eating a protein bar and drinking the last of my water, I crawled into my sleeping bag and knocked out almost immediately. It must have been close to 2 or 3 a.m. when I woke up, completely still and alert, with that weird, immediate clarity that comes when your body knows something isn't right. At first, I thought it was just the wind. It gets eerily loud in the desert at night, but then I heard it. A faint metallic ding. It wasn't loud, but it was distinct. I froze. It sounded exactly like the kind of bell you'd hear when someone steps on the rubber hose at one of those old service stations. I knew that sound, but there was no car, no people, nothing but empty desert for miles in any direction. I laid there for a minute, holding my breath, straining my ears to make sure I wasn't imagining things. And then ding again. Same exact sound. Short, light, like someone had just barely rolled over the hose. My heart was pounding now. I unzipped the side of the tent as quietly as I could and peeked out. It was pitch black, just the faint outline of the gas station against the starlit sky. I couldn't see anything moving, but the stillness was heavy, like the air itself was pressing in on me. I knew there shouldn't be any power to make a bell ring. That station hadn't seen life in years. Part of me tried to be rational. Maybe a loose animal stepped on something? But the sound was too exact, too deliberate. I slipped on my shoes and stepped out of the tent, half whispering to myself that I was just tired and imagining things. But I didn't feel tired. I felt wired, every nerve on edge. I walked slowly toward the front of the station, staying low. The place had 2 rusted gas pumps out front, both so corroded they looked like they'd fall apart if you touched them. But then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The bell sound wasn't coming from the pumps, it was coming from inside the station. Like, right behind the main doors. I stood there frozen for a second, just staring at the dark outline of the building. The front doors were glass, but so caked with filth I could barely see anything through them. I took a couple steps closer, and that's when I saw it. A faint flicker of light, like the soft yellow glow of an old overhead bulb. It blinked once, then went out. There was no power out here. I'd checked earlier when I walked around the back to make sure there weren't any sketchy squatters or wild animals. The place was completely dead. That flicker didn't make sense. Neither did the bell. Every instinct I had was telling me to get the hell out of there, but my legs wouldn't move. Then it happened again, the ding. This time louder. Clearer. Like it was right in front of me. I jumped back and nearly tripped over my own feet. I turned around fast, scanning the dark lot, but there was no one. No movement. Just the creak of the wind against the warped sign above the pumps. I backed away slowly, heading toward my tent, trying to convince myself to just pack up and ride until sunrise. But then I heard something even worse. The soft scrape of something dragging across the concrete floor inside the station. Not heavy but deliberate, like something being pulled slowly. I didn't stick around to find out what. I rushed back to the tent and started shoving everything into my pack as fast as I could, not even bothering to fold anything properly. I kept glancing over my shoulder, convinced that at any moment, someone, or something, was going to step out of those dark doors. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped my flashlight twice. I finally got everything packed and strapped to the bike, but just as I was about to hop on, I heard that sound again, the dragging. Only this time, it wasn't inside anymore. It was outside, on the pavement, somewhere behind the station. It was slow, steady, and getting closer. I didn't wait. I jumped on the bike and started pedaling like my life depended on it, heart pounding, legs burning. I didn't even care that I couldn't see more than a few feet in front of me. I just wanted distance. After about 10 minutes of riding, I finally stopped to catch my breath. I looked back. There was nothing there, just the endless stretch of dark road and desert behind me. But what really messed with me is that the moment I stopped, everything was silent. No wind, no bugs, no night sounds at all. Just dead silence, like the world was holding its breath. I stayed there for a minute, straddling my bike, trying to decide whether to keep riding or just wait for the sun to come up. I pulled out my phone to check the time, but of course, no signal. The battery was almost dead too. Classic. I thought about calling someone, just to talk to another human voice, but that wasn't an option. That silence around me started to feel unnatural. Not peaceful, wrong. Like the kind of silence you get when you walk into a room where something bad just happened. I kept turning around, scanning the darkness, half expecting to see someone coming up the road. Eventually I forced myself to keep moving. I rode for what must have been another hour, until the sky started to lighten just a bit. I found a dirt trail off the side of the highway and followed it until I reached a little rest stop, just a bench and a trash can under a wooden canopy. I sat there, exhausted, trying to make sense of the night. I knew what I heard. I wasn't dreaming. That bell wasn't a trick of the wind. The light wasn't a reflection. And that dragging sound, it wasn't an animal. I couldn't explain it, but every part of me knew I'd stumbled into something I wasn't supposed to witness. I didn't tell anyone for a while. I thought maybe it would make more sense after a few days, or maybe I'd convince myself I was just overtired, hallucinating from the ride. But the more I replayed it in my head, the more certain I became that it really happened. A few weeks later, out of pure curiosity, I tried to look up that gas station online, just to see what it was, if there was any history to it. I couldn't find a thing. No listing, no photos, not even on satellite view. It's like the place wasn't even there. Which is insane because I was there. I camped right next to it. I remember the damn cracks in the pavement and the rust on the pump handles. The weirdest part? I met another cyclist at a hostel in Utah a couple weeks later, and we got to talking about creepy stuff on the road. I didn't even mention my experience, just hinted at a weird night in Nevada, and he got real quiet. Then he asked, was it by an old gas station? With a broken sign and 2 pumps? I swear my blood ran cold. I asked him what he meant, and he said he passed a place like that a few years back, but didn't stop because it gave him a bad feeling. Said it looked like it had been abandoned forever. But here's the kicker. He said he rode that stretch again a few months ago, and the place was just gone. Like wiped clean. Nothing there but dirt. I don't know what I walked into that night, and honestly, I try not to think about it too much. It's one of those things that just sticks in the back of your mind, no matter how much time passes. Every now and then, I'll hear a similar bell, like at a store or a bike shop, and it makes my stomach flip. I get this rush of adrenaline like I need to run, even though I'm standing in broad daylight with people around me. That night changed something in me. I still ride, but I plan my routes more carefully now. I don't camp near abandoned places anymore. I don't ignore that gut feeling when something feels off. And the part that gets under my skin the most is how it all just stopped. There was no climax, no final scare, no big reveal. Just a sound, a flicker, and a feeling like I was being watched by something I couldn't see. Then it all disappeared like it had never happened. It's like whatever it was, if it was something, let me leave. Or didn't care enough to follow. I'll never have an answer for what I heard or why that place isn't there anymore. But I think that's what makes it worse. It wasn't a story with an ending. It was just something that happened, and no matter how real it felt, I'm the only one who'll ever really know what it was like to stand in that silence and hear that bell ring in the dark. I don't usually post stuff like this, but what happened to me last October still keeps me up at night, and I feel like maybe writing it down will help me make sense of it. I was hiking alone in a forest out in northern Pennsylvania, a place I'd been going to for years during the fall. The leaves were turning that deep orange-red, the air was crisp, and the trail was completely empty, exactly how I liked it. I'd taken 2 days off work, packed light, and was planning to spend the day just wandering deeper than I normally went. I wasn't worried about wildlife or even hunters. It's common to hear gunshots echoing from somewhere far off, especially during hunting season. It had never bothered me before. But that day the shots felt different. I first noticed it about an hour into the hike. I heard a single shot, sharp and distant, maybe from a hunting rifle. Nothing weird. Then maybe 3 or 4 minutes later, another one. I paused, waited, and after a bit, another shot. It was faint, but definitely there. I thought maybe someone was target shooting. Still, I kept walking. But after a while, I realized the shots weren't just random. They were coming in a steady rhythm, every few minutes. And more than that, they were getting louder. Closer. It was like someone was moving through the woods and firing a single shot, waiting, and then moving again. And it wasn't in any direction. It was coming from behind me. At first, I tried to shake it off. I picked up my pace a little, figuring maybe someone was just hunting and happened to be headed the same direction as me. But there was no sign of anyone, no other cars at the trailhead, no distant voices, no rustling except the wind pushing through the trees. I kept glancing over my shoulder, feeling this slow crawl of unease building in my chest. After about 20 minutes of this, I stopped to listen more carefully. And I swear, the moment I went still, the shot came again. This time it sounded way too close, like less than a few hundred yards behind me. No birds scattered, no animals darted off. Just silence, heavy silence, and that creeping feeling that I wasn't alone out there. That's when I started to really panic. I got off the trail and started cutting through the trees, trying to move perpendicular to the shots. I didn't want to run blindly and get myself lost, but something deep in me said I had to break the line, get out of whatever path I was in. As I moved, I noticed something strange. Every time I stopped to catch my breath, it was like the forest held its breath with me. No crunching leaves behind me, no snapping twigs, but I felt like I was being tracked. It was this overwhelming sense of being watched, like eyes on the back of my neck. Then, just as I was starting to convince myself it was all in my head, another shot, louder than before. And it came from a completely different direction, ahead of me now. That stopped me cold. I just froze right there, behind a thick cluster of trees, trying to make sense of it. How the hell did whoever was shooting get ahead of me? I hadn't heard anyone pass. No footsteps, no movement, just those perfectly timed shots. I stayed crouched down for a while, trying to slow my breathing. The worst part was that I didn't hear anything else. Not even the usual forest noises, no squirrels darting around, no birds calling. It was like the whole place was holding its breath. I felt like I'd stepped into some kind of dead zone. Then, just when I thought I could maybe sneak back toward the trail, another shot cracked, this time off to my left. They were triangulating. That's when I realized this wasn't just some weird coincidence or multiple hunters crossing paths. This felt deliberate. The shots were hurting me, keeping me moving in a specific direction, like they were pushing me somewhere. I know how that sounds crazy, but when you're out there, alone, and something starts manipulating your movements like that, it's like your body figures it out before your brain does. I didn't even think anymore, I just bolted. I tried to run quietly, zigzagging through the underbrush, but everything I stepped on felt like it was exploding under my boots. I kept expecting to hear footsteps or see someone, anyone. But it was just me and the shots. I don't know how long I ran like that, maybe 15, 20 minutes. Everything blurred together. The forest started to look unfamiliar, and that scared me more than anything. I'd been in those woods so many times before, but suddenly I couldn't recognize a damn thing. No trail markers, no clearings I remembered. Just endless trees, and the sound of dry leaves crunching under my feet. And then nothing. No more gunshots. Just silence again. It should have been a relief, but it was worse. It felt like I'd been dropped into a trap, like whatever, or whoever, had been guiding me with those shots had gotten me exactly where they wanted. And now they were just waiting. I stopped behind this big, moss-covered boulder and tried to listen for any sign of movement. Nothing. Not a branch snap, not a footstep, not even wind. It was dead still. I remember thinking how wrong that felt. Even in the most remote parts of the forest, there's always something, a bug, a breeze, something moving. But this felt like the world had paused. That's when I caught something out of the corner of my eye. About 20 feet ahead, between the trees, there was this figure, not moving, just standing there. Too far to make out details, but I knew for sure it wasn't a tree. It was tall, almost unnaturally so, and it wasn't wearing hunter orange or any kind of gear. Just still. Watching. I didn't move. I couldn't. I was crouched behind that rock, barely breathing, heart pounding so hard I thought it would give me away. The figure didn't move either. It just stood there like it knew I saw it. I tried to convince myself it was just another hiker, maybe someone just as lost as me, but deep down I knew better. No one stands that still in the woods. No one just appears in the middle of nowhere after a pattern of gunshots like that. My legs were shaking so bad I could barely keep crouched. I kept staring, trying to make sense of it, and then just like that, it was gone. No sound, no movement, no footsteps. Just not there anymore. That's when I finally broke. I sprinted in the opposite direction, not caring where I was going anymore. I just needed a way. I must have run for another 10 minutes before I tripped over some half-buried root and ate dirt hard. I hit my shoulder and scraped up my face, but I didn't care. I was just lying there, breathing heavy, listening. And still nothing. The woods were just quiet again, like the whole thing had reset. I dragged myself up, started moving slower this time, trying to get my bearings. I finally saw a familiar trail marker, one I hadn't passed that day. Somehow I'd been turned completely around. I was maybe 30 minutes from the parking lot if I kept steady. I didn't waste any more time. I didn't look back. Not once. I kept thinking that if I turned around, I'd see that figure again, or worse, nothing, and I'd start to doubt everything that just happened. When I finally reached the clearing near the parking area, I felt this wave of relief hit me so hard I almost dropped to my knees. But that relief didn't last. My car was the only one there, just like when I arrived. No signs of other hikers, no other vehicles, nothing. Which didn't make sense, because if someone was out there shooting or following me, they didn't just vanish. I stood by my car for a long time, half expecting to hear another shot from deep in the woods. But the forest stayed quiet, like it was pretending nothing had happened. I got in, locked the doors, and sat there for a few minutes before starting the engine. I was trying to process it all, trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was just some hunter messing around. Maybe I got turned around and panicked. But no matter how I looked at it, the pattern of those shots, the way they moved with me, and that figure, none of it adds up. I've been back to those woods since, but only during the day and never alone. And even then, I don't go past a certain point. I don't tell many people this story because honestly it sounds insane. But I know what I felt. Something was out there that day, and it wanted me to know it. The weirdest part? I went back a few weeks later with a friend, just to prove to myself it was all in my head. We followed the same trail, and at one point I recognized the spot where I'd seen the figure. But the forest didn't feel the same. It was like whatever had happened that day just wasn't there anymore. No strange silence, no pressure in the air, no pattern of shots. Nothing. My friend joked the whole time about me watching too many horror movies, and I laughed along, but inside I felt sick. Because the truth is, I wish it had just been in my head. But I remember how it felt, the way the air shifted, how my instincts screamed at me, how I was guided. And the worst part, I still don't know why it stopped. Why it let me go. It's like it just lost interest. I've been living out of my van for about 7 months now. I usually stick to BLM land or remote forest roads, places where I can be alone, reset, and just enjoy the silence. A few days ago, I pulled off onto this little dirt turnout I found while driving through northern Arizona. It wasn't on any app or map, which made it feel like a secret spot. No one had driven by since I parked there the evening before, and I hadn't seen a single light or heard a single engine. It was dead quiet. I made some dinner, read for a bit, and fell asleep with the back doors cracked open to let the breeze in. It was just one of those calm, perfect nights you dream about when you start this lifestyle. The weird part started the next morning. I woke up around 6:30 a.m., still groggy and not fully awake. I stepped outside to stretch and take in the view, and that's when I saw it. This little yellow post-it note stuck to my side mirror. At first I thought maybe it was just something I'd written and forgot about, but when I got closer, I realized it wasn't my handwriting. It just said, "Hello," in these shaky, almost childlike letters. No other markings, nothing on the back. My stomach dropped. I hadn't heard anyone approach during the night, and my van is loud. You can hear every footstep on the gravel. There was no car nearby, no tire tracks that hadn't already been there, and the note looked freshly stuck. It wasn't there when I went to bed, I'm sure of it. I looked around, trying to shake off the unease, but something felt off. The trees around me were still, no wind, no birds chirping, nothing. Just this heavy silence pressing down. I took the note off and kept staring at it, like maybe if I looked long enough it would explain itself. I thought about whether someone had been watching me, maybe messing with me for fun, but there was no sign of anyone. I even checked around the van, walked the perimeter, looked for footprints or anything disturbed, but it all looked exactly how I'd left it the night before. Except for that one damn note. I suddenly became very aware of how isolated I was. No cell signal, no nearby houses, no one to yell to if something went wrong. I tried to stay calm and convince myself it was just some hiker or another camper playing a joke, but my gut kept twisting. I've camped in places way sketchier than this, and I've never had anything like this happen. I kept thinking, why hello? Why not something threatening or something obvious? That one word was somehow creepier. Like whoever left it didn't want to scare me off, they wanted me to know they were there. I couldn't shake that thought. I ended up packing up fast, barely even ate breakfast. I just needed to get out of there. But before I drove off, I took a picture of the note. I don't know why. I guess part of me thought I might need proof. I threw the note away, and I swear I felt like something was watching me from the tree line as I drove off. About an hour later, I pulled into a small gas station in a town that looked half abandoned. Just one pump working, and an old guy behind the counter who barely looked up when I came in. I asked him if there were other campers or vans nearby, if anyone had passed through recently. He just shrugged and said, "Not many come through this road anymore." I didn't bother showing him the note. I don't know, I guess I didn't want to sound paranoid. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. I kept replaying everything in my head. The silence, the untouched gravel, how close someone had to get to leave that note. And the fact that I hadn't heard a single thing. It was eating at me. I got back in the van and drove further out, thinking I just needed to put some distance between me and that place. By late afternoon, I was starting to relax a bit. Found another pull-off spot near a dry creek bed, still remote but with a little more light coming through the trees. I parked, turned off the engine, and sat there in silence for a while, windows cracked. No notes, no weird vibes, just the sound of some birds and the wind through the leaves. I told myself it was over, that whoever it was probably just stumbled on my van and left the note as a dumb joke. But then, around dusk, I went to grab something from the front seat and I froze. Right there, tucked under my windshield wiper, another post-it. Same yellow color. Same shaky handwriting. But this time it said, "Why did you leave?" I stood there for a solid minute, just staring at the note through the windshield. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I hadn't heard anyone approach. Again, I had just parked maybe 20 minutes before, and I'd been sitting with the windows open, completely alert. There was no way someone could have walked up and left that without me noticing. I got out of the van slowly, like something might be waiting just out of view. I scanned the trees, the creek bed, even up into the hills, but there was nothing. Not a sound. The sun was dipping behind the ridge, and the shadows were getting longer, and all I could think was, I'm not alone out here. Someone followed me. And not just followed. They had to have known exactly when to leave the note without being seen. I grabbed my keys and got back into the driver's seat, so fast I didn't even shut the side door all the way. I started the engine and took off without a plan, just driving. No GPS signal, just instincts. I couldn't stop glancing in the mirrors, half expecting to see someone step out of the trees or a car trailing me from a distance. But there was nothing. The road twisted through the forest, and I didn't even know where I was heading. All I knew was I needed to put as much space as possible between me and whatever was out there. I couldn't understand how this person, if it was just a person, managed to find me again so fast. I'd driven for over an hour, taken turns at random, didn't post my location anywhere, and yet, somehow, they were one step ahead. Eventually I found a narrow service road that led up a ridge, bumpy and overgrown, but I took it anyway. Anything to get somewhere higher, somewhere with a view. I drove until the trees thinned out and parked near a small clearing where I could see the surrounding area a bit better. I sat there, engine off, holding my breath, listening. The silence felt thick, unnatural. Even up there, no crickets, no wind, nothing. I didn't know what to do. I didn't feel safe sleeping, and I was too exhausted to keep driving. I kept the doors locked and decided I'd stay up as long as I could, just to be sure no one came near. I turned off every light inside the van and sat in the dark, watching out the windows, flinching at every rustle or crack I thought I heard. Around 2 or 3 a.m., I must have dozed off without realizing. When I woke up, it was still dark, but there was something different. The air felt wrong, heavier. I looked around groggily, and then I saw it. Another post-it, stuck to the inside of the passenger window. Inside. My blood ran cold. I hadn't opened that door since the afternoon. The van had been locked. The note just said, "I see you." I swear I stopped breathing. I couldn't make sense of it. I felt frozen, violated. Whoever this was had been inside my van while I was asleep, without a sound, without leaving a trace. I checked every door, every window. All locked. No signs of forced entry. I even tore through my things, thinking maybe they'd taken something. But everything looked untouched. Except me. I felt like my sanity had been cracked open. I left that spot before the sun was fully up. I didn't care about sleep, I didn't care about breakfast, I just drove. I didn't even know what direction I was going, I just wanted to get to a town, any town. I eventually reached a highway, and pulled into a diner around 9 a.m. I must have looked like hell, because the waitress asked if I was okay before I even ordered. I didn't tell her anything. What was I supposed to say? That someone left notes on my van in the middle of nowhere, got inside without leaving a trace, and might still be watching me? I just ate quietly, constantly checking the windows, jumping at every person who came through the door. When I finally got Wi-Fi, I went through my dash cam footage, thinking maybe it caught something. But all I saw was static for hours during the night. Like something or someone had tampered with it. It's been 2 weeks since that happened, and I haven't gone back to boondocking since. I've only stayed in busy, well-lit campgrounds with other people around. I still check my mirrors every morning before I even get out of bed. I keep my van locked at all times, even during the day. And I haven't seen another post-it since. But that doesn't really make me feel better. It almost makes it worse. Like, whatever happened that night wasn't random. It wasn't just someone messing around. It was something deliberate, focused. And the worst part is, I don't know what they wanted. I don't know how they found me. And I don't know why they stopped. But sometimes, when I'm parked alone for even a second too long, I swear I feel that same heaviness in the air. Like someone's still watching. Waiting. Like they never really left. I've always had this dumb habit of going out alone to take photos in abandoned places, especially around sunrise. There's something about the silence in those forgotten spots that pulls me in. That morning, I decided to drive out to a ghost town about 2 hours from where I live. I'd been there once before, but only during the day. This time, I wanted to catch the sunrise hitting those decaying buildings. There's a weird beauty in that. I left around 4 in the morning, and got there just as the sky was turning that pale early blue. I set up my tripod near the main street, and started taking some shots of the old gas station, which sat right across from this old diner. Everything was dead quiet, just the wind and the occasional sound of crows off in the distance. As I moved to get a better angle, I glanced over at the diner and immediately froze. There was someone sitting inside, not moving, just there. It looked like a man, sitting in one of the booths near the window, half in shadow. I couldn't make out any details, but the figure was definitely there. It startled the hell out of me because I hadn't seen anyone else for miles, no other cars on the way in, no signs of life. For a second I thought maybe it was a mannequin or something left behind, but something about the way it was sitting didn't feel right. It was too still, too deliberate. I took a quick photo, kind of instinctively, then walked a bit closer to get a better look. That's when I noticed the front door of the diner was slightly open. I didn't go in or anything. I just stood there for a minute, maybe less, trying to decide if I should call out or just leave it alone. The air felt weird all of a sudden, not cold exactly, but heavy like it was pressing down on me. I looked away for a second to check my camera settings, and when I glanced back up at the window, the booth was empty. The figure was gone. I didn't hear any movement, no creaking floorboards, nothing. It was just gone. That hit me harder than I expected. I got this tight feeling in my chest, like my body knew something was off before my brain could catch up. I took a step back and decided to loop around the block, maybe clear my head, and check out the old barber shop on the next corner before heading back. It couldn't have been more than 5 minutes. I walked slowly, took a few shots here and there, but I was mostly thinking about what I'd just seen. When I came back around and passed in front of the diner again, I stopped dead. The front door, the same one that had been slightly open, was now shut tight. But not just shut. There was a heavy rusted chain wrapped through the handles, padlocked from the outside. Like someone had locked it up recently. I swear on everything, that chain wasn't there earlier. I was right in front of that door, I would have noticed. My stomach dropped. I kept staring at the chain like it would somehow make sense if I looked at it long enough. But it didn't. None of it did. I started looking around to see if maybe someone had been messing with me. Maybe a local messing with dumb city folks who come around with cameras thinking they're brave. But the place was empty. Just old buildings, broken glass, weeds growing through concrete. I even checked for fresh footprints near the diner, but the ground was covered in dust and gravel. Nothing looked disturbed. No tire tracks either. It didn't make sense. I even thought maybe I'd imagined the door being opened before, but I knew it was. I remembered the way it creaked a little in the wind, how it barely hung on its hinges. And that figure inside, there's no way I made that up. I was too alert, too aware of every detail in that moment. I thought about walking up to the door again, seeing if I could peek through the windows, but something stopped me. It felt like the air was holding its breath. That's the only way I can describe it. I got this rush of cold all over my back, like someone was standing right behind me. I turned around fast, nothing there. But I swear, in that second I felt it. Like I wasn't alone, even though I couldn't see anyone. I backed away slowly and tried to shake it off, but my hands were already shaking. I figured maybe I'd just scared myself, and decided to head back to my car. The sun was starting to rise higher, casting long shadows across the street, and for the first time in years, I didn't want to be there anymore. As I was heading back to the car, I passed by the diner one last time. I couldn't help it, I had to look. The windows were grimy and cracked, but I cupped my hands against the glass and tried to see inside. It was dark, too dark for that time of morning. Like the light just wasn't getting in there. I could barely make out the outline of the booths and the counter, but the booth where the figure had been sitting, it was completely empty. No dust disturbed, no signs anyone had touched anything. But then, just as I started to pull away, I noticed something on the glass. A smudge. Not a handprint exactly, more like a smear, like someone had dragged their fingers down the inside of the window. Fresh. That was it for me. I turned and walked fast. I didn't run, but I was damn close. The whole drive home, I couldn't stop replaying it in my head. The figure, the door, the chain, that feeling like something was right behind me. I checked the photos when I got home, the ones I took before and after, and sure enough, in the earlier shots, the door is clearly open. You can even see a faint silhouette inside the diner if you zoom in, like someone sitting there, hunched. But the photo I took on the way back, the door is chained shut. Plain as day. And the weirdest part, the timestamp on both photos is exactly 5 minutes apart. I didn't mess with the files, didn't edit anything. I even checked the metadata to be sure. Something happened out there, and I still can't explain it. I posted the photos in a small photography group I'm part of, just asking if anyone had any idea what the figure might be, or if maybe it was a trick of the light. Most people thought it was creepy, but chalked it up to shadows or reflections. One guy messaged me privately, said he'd been to that same ghost town years ago, and had a weird experience too, but he wouldn't go into detail. Just told me, don't go back there. That stuck with me more than I care to admit. I didn't respond. What was I supposed to say? I wasn't planning on going back anyway. Every time I looked at that one photo, the one with the silhouette, I felt a pit in my stomach, like looking at something I wasn't supposed to see. A few nights after the trip, I woke up around 3 a.m. to a banging sound. Not loud, but sharp, like metal hitting metal. I thought maybe it was something outside. I live in a quiet area, so any sound at night gets my attention. I went to the window, looked out, saw nothing. But when I turned around to go back to bed, I saw my camera on the desk blinking. The battery had been dead earlier that evening. I hadn't touched it. When I checked it the next morning, there was a new photo stored on the memory card. Just one. It was completely black, no light, no shapes, nothing. But when I turned up the brightness all the way, I could swear I saw a faint outline, a booth, a window, and a figure. I've tried to rationalize it 100 different ways. Maybe the camera glitched, maybe I took the photo by accident, though I don't know how, since it was turned off and on the other side of the room. I even brought it into a camera shop to have it checked out, but they said everything was working fine. I ended up deleting that black photo after a while. I couldn't look at it anymore. Every time I did, I felt like it was staring back at me, like whatever I saw or thought I saw hadn't stayed in that town. I stopped going out for sunrise shoots after that. Sold the camera eventually. People say you can capture more than just images when you take a photo. I don't know if I believe that, but I do know that something followed me home that day, even if it was just the feeling. It's been over a year now, and I still think about it all the time. That diner. That figure. The chain on the door. How everything changed in 5 minutes. I haven't been back, and I never will. Sometimes I'll be walking past a diner here in my own city, one of those old ones with big windows and red vinyl booths, and I get this sick feeling in my gut. Like I'll glance in and expect to see someone just sitting there, not moving, watching. I've talked myself out of believing it was anything supernatural, but the truth is, I don't have a better explanation. It happened, and the worst part is not knowing what I saw or what saw me. 1 second it was just a sunrise shoot, and the next, it felt like I opened a door that was never meant to be opened. And I still don't think it's fully closed.